Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to be starting our next drawing project. This project is going to require that you create a collage to use as a drawing source to make a final drawing from. So I guess the first thing we should do is talk a little bit about what a collage is, show some examples, and then I'll show you some student examples of this project, and we'll talk a little bit about the assignment, what you need to do to get started. So let's share screen and talk about this project. Okay, I guess first we'll go here. I'm going to send you to this link. This is the Tate Museum in London, Contemporary Art Museum. And it's a great resource for learning about art terms, and you can view through their collection. So basically a collage is just an arrangement of cut up pieces of paper, photographs, fabric, and other things that may come together, adhere to a surface to create a new image. So quick example, you can see that this is made up of colored pieces of paper, magazine clippings, Minnie Mouse, other things arranged into a new composition. So if you scroll down here, you can look at related terms, things like montage, photo montage, chine collé, paper collé, things like that. You can also explore these terms through different artists and see what types of work. For example, Matisse did these fabric sort of cutout collages. We can also look at different artists in the collection. So if we look at this artist, for example, we can see a combination of different photos coming together. The landscape ends up looking like the face. It's an interesting way to combine things together. And you can see other artworks by this artist. So I'm going to send you to this site to just browse around. Another site that I think is really good, I'm just going to go back here, is Juxtapose Magazine. A lot of really interesting graphic images, illustrative images, contemporary art images, sometimes kind of graffiti based, other things like that I think are really interesting. And this is just a search that I did for collage, and I thought this artist Karen Lynch was pretty interesting. You can see the way that she's combining multiple different photographs, particularly those that look like they're a little bit outdated, so old vintage images. Here you have multiple mountains assembled together into one landscape. Nice 50s, 60s vintage modernist living room with a window that opens up to the universe. So you get the idea here. We're going to be merging images together to create new forms. Here we have this terrarium, people riding horses inside and a frog on top. This is a chance for you to be creative and sort of merge some things together. So the basics of the assignment, first is the research. You're going to be collecting images that are photographic in nature. So magazines, newspapers, old books that you may not want anymore. You could also use your own photographs if you have access to a printer, or things that are already been printed, posters, anything like that that you can, that you're willing to sacrifice for the project. And then just keep in mind that, I do want you to keep this as photographic images. So things like, illustrations, cartoons, etc. Let's just try to stay away from those. I do want you to focus on looking at photographs to draw from. So first part is research, collect those things. Second part is you're going to be cutting those things out and playing around with different organizations. And our ultimate objective is to create a graphite drawing based on that collage that you create and try to be as accurate as we can. Let me show you some quick student examples. This is from spring term. So here you can see a nice example of multiple images merged together. We have a background that looks like some earth that a car has driven over to create this tire print. We have in the other background, we have a tree that looks like it's been flipped upside down. There's a bird, a light bulb, a flower, and those things merge together as a collage and then drawn from pretty nicely in terms of textures and tones and lines and good shading and quality there. There's another one, a bit more experimental. This student really wanted to slice up the images that she was working with, so multiple slices vertically across. We have an eyeball, we have a few silhouettes of figures climbing a hill, fruit skewer and some legs. all cut up in different ways to create this really more surrealistic looking kind of image. So we don't need to adhere to any sort of rules or reality or gravity or anything like that. You can really merge things together and be experimental. And finally, this is another nice one. Here we have this, summer scene. We have a deck with chalkboard with a nice drawing of the water, ice cream cone with a butterfly, and then it looks like two very hungry crocodiles waiting to get a bite, perhaps. So this gives you an example of ultimately the end part of the project. Let's talk a little bit about how to get started. So let's stop share here and switch to our document camera. Okay, basic supplies that you need. We are going to be cutting, so scissors, X-Acto knife comes in really handy. Any sort of other cutting devices, some sort of glue is good. Ruler, pencil, these things are needed to start. Now, what I'm going to recommend is, since we're working on a 9x12, I'd like our image size to be 8x10. So what I've done is I just have a sheet of 8.5x11 paper, and you can see that I've drawn a line on it so that this rectangle in the middle is 10 inches by 8 inches, and that's going to be the image that we're going to work with. And then I've just collected a bunch of newspapers and things that I have around. There's different things, New York Times. There's also some magazines that I have, things like New York Times Magazine, good old Better Homes and Gardens, Family Handyman, all these fun things, right? And I sort of searched through and I found some different images that I'm going to use. Now, first off, what I want to do is think a little bit about the background. Let's just start from back to front. And when I was searching through, I found this nice big advertisement from Louis Vuitton, right? What child wouldn't be holding the Louis Vuitton logo while looking out at a ship? But I like this part, which could be a really good background. And so that's what I want to start with. And then I found this image, which I thought was cool, which is this beautiful landscape of this arch, natural arch that's been created. And I thought this would be cool because I could cut this out and have another landscape behind it. And then as I was searching through, I found this advertisement for Alaska cruises. I don't think anyone's going to be going on an Alaska cruise for some time, but I thought this would be cool. This elk, caribou, maybe perched on top of here, all right? So I'm going to get started. What we're going to do is just sort of trim, cut these things out, and assemble them together a little bit. So I'm just going to pause for a second, get started, so you don't have to sit through all of my meandering, and then I'll come back and show you where I've gotten. Okay, folks, I'm back. You can see that I've started to slice and dice. Now, as I was cutting this out, first I thought I was going to work landscape, and I thought, this is a landscape, it'll fit landscape. And then when I started to arrange, I realized I can't get these things to fit. So I think instead I'm going to go portrait. So determine which way you're going to go before you start working. And you can see that I had to splice on another piece of my sky here to do so. So what I have is my background of the water in the boat, stone arch that I've cut out, and then I have this caribou. Now, I just want to talk really quickly. I'm not going to bother cutting out the caribou too much because I'm just going to, work around it. But I did want to talk about using the X-Acto knife really quickly, if I can find it under my layers of paper. All right. You have this X-Acto knife. Now you're going to need, this is a very super sharp point. You're going to need some sort of cutting surface. I have this cutting mat. You may not have something like that, which is totally fine. If you need to, just use the back of your board. An old piece of cardboard or the back of your mat is perfect for this. And the way that you cut is, when you start, I usually hold my fingers apart of where I'm going to cut, and so I know that I'm not going to cut myself. This loosens up so the blade can come out, and then it tightens so the blade is locked in place. So make sure it's locked in place. And I usually press down, not super hard, but enough to get through the paper. Newspaper is really easy to cut through. And then you're just turning the point. So if you stop, you can turn the blade and pivot, right? So keep the point in the whole time. If you need to, you can rotate. Point is still down because it's helpful to cut, sometimes in a single direction. So you're not cutting towards yourself, okay? And you can just go through and cut things out to the best of your ability. Now, it doesn't have to be a science. It doesn't have to be super precise, because we are going to be turning this into a drawing, and we could certainly take all kinds of liberties after the fact to make it really, you know, seamless. Okay, so again, don't worry about making it super perfect. Get it the best you can. I think the rule of thumb here is don't cut towards your hand. Okay, there you go. Horse head cut out fairly nicely, ready to go. Let's talk about our collage here. So I've got my substrate. This is not, I'm just any old piece of paper or piece of cardboard or whatever you have. This is just going to be our surface that we mount to. All right, so first step is I'm going to be going in this direction, and I'm probably going to have to go through and confirm my lines afterwards. But what I can do is just kind of like as a guide, set this up. Here's my piece because it was too big. I had to cut it twice. All right, I want the ship to be through the canyon here and kind of arranged like that maybe. That looks pretty good. And then the caribou on top. So I'm going to first start with a couple of cut lines. Here I can kind of gauge. Let's put the caribou under here. That's good. And I'm going to gauge how tall this needs to be, probably something like that. So I can cut down to here. So what I'm going to do is just lay my ruler on this. Hopefully that's in view, right about there. Looks pretty good. Okay, and then I'll just cut through this whole thing so I have a bottom edge that I'll work from. Okay, and then I'm also going to cut vertically along that edge too, so I have a nice straight edge. Try to keep it along the 90-degree. Okay, there we go. Now I've got a corner that I can work with, and I'm just going to start with that. All right. So I've got more than I need, so I'm just going to trim this off. There we go. And I'm just going to glue this down. It doesn't have to be, you know, first of all, I would say play around with a bunch of different combinations before you make a commitment to this. You know, see what's going to work best. Feel free to email me your combinations and say, hey, what's the best image here? Take a few different photos and see where you go. All right, so see, this doesn't fit perfectly, but that's okay. I can always make it up after the fact. All right, so I'm just going to take my glue stick. Oohoo. I don't know how to pronounce that. U-H-U. Oohoo. Okay, glue that down. Hold it tight. Glue down a little bit more. Okay. Same here. Just get the edges. Again, this just needs to be held in place. It doesn't need to be secured to hold back a tornado. Okay, there we go. Collage. Step one. I could add this, right, if I needed to. Why not? I'm just going to trim it. Okay, something like that. There we go. Okay, now the cool thing is I could go back and trim this. Let's see if I can do it ever so lightly. Just gonna hardly put any pressure down. I'm gonna keep the ruler there and lift it up. There, I've got it along that edge. All right, there we go. Fits in there. Get rid of this. Perfect. Okay, now I'm gonna arrange the landscape, which should go something like this. Maybe a little lower. That looks pretty good. Again, I'm just gonna hold it down here. Put an area that I know is going to be stuck, and then kind of lift and go around it as well. There, here. There we go. And now I've got my landscape piece in place. And finally, the caribou. Where did the caribou go? Here it is. So I'm just going to tuck this under. I'm not even going to bother cutting this out. And the reason is I'm just going to be referencing it for the tone. Maybe I should cut a little bit out. All right, let's do that. Just quickly go in here and just cut this out really loosely. Again, I'm going to take the creative liberties with when I'm adding the background to do it however I want. I don't have to have it be exactly perfect, but just for visualization, I'm just going to rough cut this. There we go. Okay, caribou. There we go, under here. Maybe kind of looking over the edge a little bit. Yeah, I think so. I think like kind of leaning over, like what's over there. All right, a little bit of glue. Place that down. Okay, there you go. This is my collage. This is step one. I'm going to use this as my drawing reference. I think I don't have my phone on me, but what I'd like to do with this next, because I have color in black and white, is I'm just going to photograph it with my phone and turn it into black and white and see what it looks like. And that's good reference to use. So this is step one. I'm going to be posting step 2 and 3, maybe even 4 as we go along here. I'd like you to get this collage started as soon as possible because our next drawing project is due at the end of next week. So let me know if you have any questions. Again, we're creating an 8 by 10 inch collage. I suggest not using tiny little images. Find big, large, bold images that you can reference, easier to render, and then create something really interesting. Think about what sort of idea you can bring to this. All right, that's it for now. Let's switch cameras so I can sign off. All right, see you later, everybody. I'll be posting part 2 very soon. Take care.